We're here in Malaga at the Vinci Hotels and we're speaking to Tony Gray. Tony is chairman of the CCBG, which is the Critical Communications Broadband Group, which is part of the TETRA and Critical Communications Association. And Tony, thank you very much for your attendance.
Welcome.
It's quite a while. You're here in this position now for 2 years.
Yeah.
A lot has happened. Can you let us know a little bit more what has happened over the last 2 years in that position? Because TETRA is here, you're from the CCBG Broadband Group. Can you give us a little bit more information?
Yeah, well, thanks, Gert-Jan. It's delightful to be here and to still be here after almost 2 years. As you said, 2 years ago we set up the CCBG with the aims really of promoting and driving the standardization in 3GPP and other standards development organizations, the single global critical communications LTE standard that we want to see applicable to all critical communications users, whether they be public safety, utility, transportation, or anyone for whom communications is critical. In parallel with doing that, we've also been working hard on finding the spectrum into which those future critical broadband networks will be able to operate, and developing, supporting documentation. So, for example, we've produced white papers and published those. Very recently, we've produced a couple of important documents. One is called the strategic case, and that is what it says, essentially the kind of outline business case or the value proposition as to why should governments, investors, regulators put valuable resources, money, spectrum and so on into critical broadband for the future. And the other one's called the implementation options paper, which again, as the name says, describes all the different ways in which such capabilities might be delivered in the future. And we're finding a great reception for those as assistance to people understanding what's involved and the ways in which these future capabilities might be delivered. In 3GPP, in the standardization body, we've been successful to get a number of work items included which are very specific to the critical communications world, which, if you think about it, where we are perhaps a few millions of critical communications PMR users currently using TETRA or TETRAPOL or P25 against the 7 billion ecosystem into which we're now trying to put ourselves, it's quite a successful start, but there's still a lot more work to do.
So I believe every 2 years there are re-elections for that position. So I assume you're not finished with your job, is that correct?
Absolutely, and I'm delighted to be able to put myself forward and stand for re-election as the chairman. Also my very capable and delightful vice chair, a lady called Emmanuelle Villebroom, representing the French Ministry of Interior. She has also said that she wants to carry on and put herself forward. So between us, we're kind of hoping nobody else wants the job, but even if they do, we think that we've done reasonably well so far, so we might have a chance to be re-elected.
Okay. Well, Tony, with regards to the spectrum, because I believe spectrum is the most important thing for public safety organizations to use broadband communications going forward. Is it correct that not every country in Europe, the 700 megahertz spectrum can be used for public safety? Is there still a lot of stuff to do, also within the European Union?
Absolutely right, yeah. In fact, in the world, there are very, very few parts of the world that have formally set aside any spectrum anywhere for particularly critical communications broadband. In fact, as we stand, only the United States, Canada, Australia and a couple of parts of the Middle East have identified bands and amounts of spectrum that are dedicated to that use. So the whole of the rest of the world, it's still to be decided. And specific to Europe, no, you're right, there's no pan-European understanding of what band or how much spectrum for PPDR broadband. And the great white hope from our perspective, and an aspect that our spectrum director has been focusing on very strongly, is the upcoming World Radio Conference in 2015, where there are two adjacent agenda items, agenda item 1.2 and 1.3, I think I'm right in saying, which are, one of which is looking to allocate spectrum specifically to PPDR, public protection and disaster relief broadband use, and the next one of which is looking to find PMR type usage for the 700 megahertz band, which is currently TV broadcasting. So what we're hoping can be achieved in Europe is a kind of combination of those two to say, yes, PMR type usage in 700 and move TV out a bit, but that PMR usage in 700 to be dedicated to PPDR broadband. And once, if we're successful in getting that highest possible CEPT type ITU allocation of spectrum in 700, then it will be up to each of the 28 individual regulators in each of the 28 European countries to decide whether they're going to pursue that. So I always say, for example, to our American colleagues, you just have the FCC to go to. We have 28 FCCs, but it's really the case. And so there's a huge job to do still there on the spectrum side.
And I believe that that job is not only done by you, by a whole team of people, but do you also have a lot of support from the manufacturer's point of view? Because they finally have to produce the products, the system, the networks and the radios. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, and CCBG is, as you quite rightly say, over 60 individual organisations contributing. So I'm just the chairman, I just facilitate some of this work. And amongst those more than 60 members are, as you rightly say, of course, manufacturers, the big manufacturers and some of the smaller ones, the traditional Tetra and PMR manufacturers, and some of the new players to our market who are coming from strictly the LTE and commercial cellular technology worlds. But we also have a lot, of course, of users, network operators, a few consultants like me, and a whole range of different interest groups, all contributing and all working towards the same common goals.
And what about the telecom regulators? Because they are finally the organizations who needs to agree, together with mostly the Ministry of Interior in many countries, to a certain spectrum. So do you have a lot of interaction between those regulators as well?
Yeah, we've been working very hard on lobbying, essentially, which is the kind of role that we have with regulators. So regulators don't necessarily come and sit in our CCBG meetings and nod sagely and go away and sign off large amounts of spectrum for us, but we do send our white papers, and we do have lobbying activities going on in very many of the European countries, as well as at the centre, and of course, as I say, everything focusing for now towards World Radio Conference 2015.
Well, it's kind of strange, right? If we are on the street walking with our PDAs, we have access to broadband everywhere around the world. It's quite normal that we expect police and public safety or other public safety organizations do have that same ability to use broadband communications in their day-to-day operations with a secure network and with everything, all the features they would like to have.
Yeah.
But that's not the case right now, unfortunately.
Absolutely right. And I've been in this industry and this world for very many years, as you can clearly see from my grey hair. But it's actually always been the case, unfortunately, that the public protection and disaster relief, the public safety, or the critical users, however you define them, have somehow always lagged behind the commercial world. So even in the early days of cellular telephones, where where businessmen were going around with huge bricks and shouting into them. The average policeman was lucky if he had a very simple walkie-talkie radio that he could hopefully get hold of his control room or his police office. But the perception of the general public is that, you know, the public safety people and the security people, they must have much better technology than us. And it's, as you rightly say, it's completely untrue.
Well, let's hope for better times. So, well, we're going to work to the fact that it's going to be better times for the police and public safety organizations for broadband communications in the near future. We're going to follow you with all of the things that are happening with the CCBG, and hopefully we'll speak to you soon with some more development on that part. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and we're going to work hard towards the future. Thanks.
Thank you very much.